Here's Brody Brazil.
I do feel like I'm chasing this story and these angles just a little bit because there have been some twists and turns and definitely some unexpecteds along the way. Let's first go back to the final Friday of the regular season when the Giants dismissed skipper Gabe Kapler. Definitely came as a surprise to many, considering that, the end of 162 is right around the corner, and they decided to make the move with those few games remaining. Instantly, I made the video here on YouTube. The Giants should consider Bob Melvin. I had some expectations that there would be changes down south with the Padres, either front office or the manager or some players. Turns out, after their season wrapped up, they did an evaluation. They said they were going to keep things intact for the next season, which did kind of make some sense. They have a lot of valuable assets. Maybe they just wanted to roll the dice again. So I didn't think much of it. I went in different directions, and also time allowed me the opportunity to consider other great options like Ron Wotus, a part of Bruce Bochy's coaching staff, and maybe somebody that should have been considered upon Bochy's retirement that turned out to not be a retirement a handful of years ago. But now it all brings me full circle because just yesterday, reports were out saying that the Padres will allow Bob Melvin to interview for the Giants' managerial position. Yeah, you already saw the thumbnail. And yes, I've already created the Photoshop. I will take credit, but I won't take credit. I definitely put him in a Giants hat and jersey. And so I'm coming back to where I started on all of this to say that I hope for Bob Melvin, and I hope for the Giants, and I hope for the players in this organization, and I hope for the fans of this organization that this partnership comes to be. And I say that based on, obviously, my background, my experience, my knowledge of Bob Melvin, everything he did with the Oakland A's for more than 10 seasons, but also based on what every other important player I've talked to has said about having him as their manager. Like, don't take it from me. Take it from me taking it from other people who worked directly under and with Bob to understand what he means to a baseball team. And especially a franchise like the Giants that is close in a lot of ways, but definitely needs to make some moves in a lot of ways and definitely needs to take the next step in a lot of ways. And hopefully this brings stability to the organization. A couple key factors here. I already kind of touched on this. What's weird about the Padres side is that A.J. Preller had mentioned, we're keeping Bob. We look forward to having him build our team again for next year. We're gonna try it one more time. And Bob has one more year right now on his Padres contract. And so allowing him to reportedly interview in San Francisco, that's an interesting move by the Padres. That's not just any team in baseball. That's not in the American League or the Central or Eastern divisions. That's another NL West team, which has the exact same ambitions you do, winning the NL West. So it's a telling move. It's an interesting move. Maybe it was the Padres' way out, the Padres' way of change. I don't know behind the scenes. I really don't know the San Diego dynamics of what they're thinking, how they want to get this done. I know A.J. Preller has been through, more than a handful of managers at this point. But that is an interesting move to even allow Bob the opportunity to interview elsewhere. By the way, do you remember the last time that Bob was allowed to interview for a new job when he still had time and a contract in his current job? Yeah, it was with the A's following 2021, and they allowed him to do an interview with the Padres. Sure enough, they jumped on quickly as they should have. But things didn't work out down there, and I know people will critique that, evaluate that. It's such a unique situation. How quickly they spent, the team they put together. Sometimes money just doesn't buy you everything or the right things. I prefer to take a look at Bob Melvin's track record over the years, over the long term. I think that's a way bigger and better indication of what he could bring to somewhere like San Francisco, which has its eyes pointed in the right direction, and again, needs some stability from the dugout on out. Bob Melvin has previous experience with Farhan Zaidi, which is interesting and which you would think makes a lot of sense here. Farhan came up, cut his teeth in the A's organization, in their front office, brought a lot of intelligence and analytics to the process, eventually broke off and did his thing with the Dodgers, and then came to San Francisco as president of baseball operations. But for a handful of years, Farhan was in the front office, Bob was in the dugout. There's already some communication, existence, familiarity that's already in place. And I don't know how many times in the hiring process when a team is looking at a new manager or new person like this for an important role like this, how often ever is that familiarity even a thing? But right now and here, it is. You don't have strangers meeting each other for the first time. You've got people that have known each other and already worked together and know what they're each all about coming into this situation. And for Farhan, look, he's a bit under the crunch, right, of trying to get this organization turned in the right direction. He wants to stay around. He wants this job. He really wants this to happen. And sometimes you got to go to the people you trust. And if this is the case and it all works out, you'd have to think that he's looking at Bob Melvin as somebody he trusts. And the same thing for Bob. He's been around the tour just a little bit. In fact, you think about all the AL and NL West teams he's managed now. He's like an exclusively a Western Division manager. Yeah, look at his bio. You would think for Bob, like, he's not just looking to take any old job. There would be potential other suitors out there for him, whether it's this season, for this upcoming season, or after his Padres contract expires. So Bob is also looking for a good opportunity, not just any opportunity and somewhere to latch on. Yeah, Bob's from the Bay Area. Of course, everybody knows he managed the A's for all those years, but he played with the Giants. He's got a ton of contacts. And I think it's so important we talk about the manager that gets brought in. If you've ever been around a big league baseball team, yes, the manager is important. They set a tone. They make most of the comments. But the staff that they also bring in to work hands-on with the players, so critical, so imperative. And you know, somebody like Bob, more from the old school mentality, he's got a Matty Williams already in his arsenal. I don't know if Bob and Ron Wotus have a connection, but imagine getting Ron Wotus back, like, in that capacity with Bo Mel. Bo Mel can bring in groups of players, groups of Giants, former Giants, people in the Giants family that exist. He can make that happen. He's got the contacts to put together an awesome coaching staff. And like I said before, the Giants are trying to take the next step. They're trying to take kind of the growth that they've already have got going and add to it, but they need stability along the way in that process. You don't want to go into a span of flipping the team and players again and another coaching staff. You really don't want to go with an experimental type move here. You want to go with something that's got a proven track record, and Bob Melvin is that. So optimally, how could this go? How does this go? I hope the interview goes well. Reported interview goes well. And I would imagine that based on the news breaking yesterday, that the Padres have allowed permission for this to happen, that it hasn't happened yet. I mean, here we are. This is a Monday. I never know what day it is. Maybe the interview's happening today or tomorrow or very soon. You would think that Bob wants to get going on this, that the Giants want to get going on this, but ultimately you'd hope that a decision comes sooner than later. Now, when could we and would we hear about this? I don't know. It's interesting. Baseball in the playoffs, you never really want to step on the playoff game's toes. So a lot of teams have news and announcements that they simply don't make until it's between the CS and the World Series or until after the World Series. So it's possible that Bob Melvin comes up for an interview. It might be one of the last ones they do. And let's also declare this. The Giants have been deep in their process of interviews. To my count, they've done at least 3, 4, or 5 interviews for the managerial position. Maybe this is the last one. And maybe it's good that they waited until this long, until they got permission. And now they're at this point. But again, you may or may not hear about this anytime soon. It doesn't mean it's not going on behind the scenes. And again, I feel like to move on this quicker, right, even if you don't officially announce it, if you can officially shake hands and agree that this is the deal you want to do, that gives Bob right now the earliest possible convenience to get together his coaching staff, the availability of the right, bench coach, hitting coach, pitching coach, What does the organization already have that you definitely want to hang on to? So there's a lot of decisions to be made. You don't want to get behind the curve and do this weeks down the road. You want to do this ASAP if you're the Giants and if you're in Bob's shoes. I also think going back to the Farhan and Melvin relationship, and I witnessed Bob work in the analytical ecosystem for so many seasons in Oakland, right? Because that's what they've always been doing. But I also understand that Bob comes from a day of playing and his earliest days of managing where it was much more based on instincts and reaction and kind of that old school mentality. But I totally watched Bob facilitate everything. Listen to what the front office is telling him to do. Also manage the game because he's the one in the dugout making those critical moves. But more so than that, how Bob works with the players on his team. The communication, the open door policy. You know, that comment from last season saying that maybe Gabe Kapler never had the room or never, that's not the case with Bob Melvin. That was the instant thing that everybody noticed in Oakland. Oh my gosh, his first season around, 2011, he took over about halfway through, but then into 2012, open door policy, the players loved him, and that was always the case from then on out. Is a great communicator, and in a situation like the Giants are in, you just need communication sometimes with players, with the media, with the fans. You don't want any, I don't want to say shadiness, right? It's not that. But you do want that full transparency, which is something Bob is so great at. And again, it's that balance of the analytical versus the instinctual, approach that he's able to manage. He's able to balance both of those things. He's not one side completely or the other side completely. He can do both, and he brings you that stable kind of old school manager attribute. And so I'll say it like this as the highest compliment. Bob Melvin might be your next Roger Craig. Bob Melvin might be your next Bruce Bochy, your next Dusty Baker. You look at the list of Giants managers in recent years, and there's a lot of long chunks of time. You want that. That's a good thing. In this day and age, teams go through skippers way too quickly. And I can tell you firsthand, if you all love Bruce Bochy gives full marks to Bob Melvin. If there was an endorsement, so to speak, that was ever going to happen, literally search it here on my YouTube channel. I did an interview with both of those two individuals in San Francisco 6-7 years ago. They talk about each other, and I know sentiments haven't really changed. So optimally, Bo Mel turns out to be your next long-term manager. He's in the right spot in his life, in his career, with this team, where they're going. You talk about taking over the Padres. It sounds easy when you've got those names, those ambitions, that type of money flying around. It's not easy. And in fact, the Mets struggled with that this year. The Dodgers obviously struggled with that this year. The Padres struggled with that. I didn't see the Yankees in the playoffs this year. You know what I'm saying? So hard to truly point the finger at the manager for the way that group broke down in San Diego. That's taken me a second to really sink in on that one right there. I made the Photoshop, but I'm familiar face, still not used to everything, but hey, you know what? I think this would be a great opportunity. Like I said, for all sides, I would love to see this happen. And I'm saying right here, right now, what are we, late 2023? I'd love to revisit this video in a handful of years and say, you know what? Told you so, and glad you did it. Thanks for checking out this video and sticking around all the way to the end. I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below if you're new to the channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe so I can definitely see you back here next time.